Hi guys, today we're looking at this beautiful 1959 hand-wired Bernie Marsden signature. This is produced by Marshall to replicate the amp that Bernie had in his days in Whitesnake. I think his original Plexi was 1978, and you can see this thing. This is a limited run of 120 worldwide, and it's got this fantastic white snakeskin Tolex finish. And the amp, according to the Marshall literature, has 3 mods made to it as compared to a standard 1959 Super Lead. The first one is that it has slightly more gain in the preamp. The second one is an adjustment to the mid-range, but more bite in the mid-range apparently, and a different negative feedback setup than a standard Marshall 1959 hand-wired. So we'll flip this thing around and have a look what it says on the back, and then today's video we're going to kind of dive into the amp and have a look at it and see if we can identify the differences from a standard Super Lead. And then we'll have a bit of a listen to it as well. Alright, here's the back, right? Number 24 of a limited run of 120 and signed by the man himself. We're looking at the serial number here. It says 2019, which sounds about right. This thing is in pristine mint condition. It doesn't even look like the back's ever come off it. You can normally tell, right, because these machine screws have normally got some signs that someone's been in there. They look pretty clean to me. Yeah, let's open this thing up and have a look. Well, I was wrong about this amp never having been serviced before. Dead giveaway. We have an odd tube, right? So these EL34s here, branded Marshall, actually obviously tongue sole tubes, right, but actually branded Marshall EL34. They'll be from the factory, and one of them, as you can see, is a good old JJ EL34L, the odd one out. Now hopefully whoever did this actually bothered to match, right, because we need push-pull amplifier. This is a pair, this is a pair. These two together, from a bias perspective, need to match these two. So clearly that's something that will be checked. Everything else looks completely stock and original. And just like the last 1959 hand-wired I had in here, an enormous laydown PT. Right, that is substantial. Let's have a look inside. Okay, let's go through this Bernie Marsden hand-wired Super Lead. And I just want to go through the board and any other kind of notable things, point out the differences compared to a standard 1959 Super Lead or the 1959 hand-wired, right? So here's our cathodes. That's an 820R with a 330 microfarad bypass. That's standard. 2K7 with 0.68 bypass, standard. Okay, 68K grid stoppers here for each of the inputs here, standard. These are 0.022 couplers. Well, that is there, sorry, that's a 0.022 coupler, so that's standard. This will be for the normal channel. Now, here's the first difference, right? In a stock Plexi, right? A stock Super Lead or even 1987X 50 watt Plexi, it's 100K and 100K plate resistors all day long. This is a 120K, all right? So a slightly or a higher plate resistor like that will generate a little bit more gain out of this gain stage, right, out of this triode. Not 20% more, right? A little bit more. I'll put a link to a separate clip that I have dealing with plate resistors and changing the value of a plate resistor and what impact it has on the gain stage. You can have a look at that and check that out. All right, it's not 20% more, but it is more. All right, so that's definitely a change. Here we have a 0.022 coupling cap on the high treble channel. That's also normal. All right, it's kind of 100 watt plexi. That's pretty normal. Okay, this is different. Right, so these are the mixing resistors, often called the mixing resistors, 470K and 470K. This is the point where the two channels, right, so you've got a normal volume and a high treble volume. This is where they kind of come together and kind of, mix together. And from this point in the amp, it goes off through this green wire here into the third gain stage, okay, which is V2A. Now, in a stock 1959 Super Lead, you have this is a peaker cap, right? It allows more top end through. So it's like it's like a high pass cap, right? It allows more kind of top end bite. So this bypass cap here, which is connected to this in parallel with this 470K here, is for the high treble channel. And this other 470 here without the cap is for the normal channel. This is one of the reasons, in combination with the bright cap, which I'll talk about in a second, why the high treble channel is brighter. And this bright cap is a gnarly 4700 picofarad, 4N7, which is awesome. That's old school, early 70s era JMP Marshalls, right? That's fantastic and it's awesome to see in this amp. Marshall have done it properly. Now, back to this guy. In a standard 1959, you'd normally see a 470 picofarad here. This is a 560, kind of next value up in the kind of common values. It's a silver mica cap. So this will allow, it's going to decrease the frequency. So it's kind of allowing a bit more upper mids to come through. This will be one of the mods when they talk about, a bit more mid-range bite perhaps in this amp. This will be one of the reasons why. Okay, so that's definitely different. So far we've got one mod, two mods. Moving along here, this is an 820 ohm resistor, which is the cathode resistor for V2A. This yellow wire here will connect into here. You will often see in a Super Lead a 0.68 bypass here as well. And, in the infamous EVH #1 Plexi, a big bypass cap like that on it as well. The fat cap, often called the fat cap, right? So interestingly, no bypass cap there. So we won't be getting quite so much gain out of this gain stage as we would if we had a bypass cap there. Look at this. This is plate resistor for V2A. You'll often see this, right? So the cathode follower, the blue wire is the B+ supply for the cathode follower side, which is V2B. Cathode follower is the triode that is driving the tone stack. Now, you'll often see this, right, where you're just in the Marshall wiring, you'll see this resistor just straight across the pins here. That's 100K in a stock Marshall and a stock Super Lead. That's 120 again, right? So that's a mod, definitely. All right, so we're 1, 2, 3 mods. Number 4 is this. Again, this is 560 picofarad cap. This is the treble cap for the tone stack, right? So the tone stack, which is controlled by these 3 pots here, are actually connected to these 3 capacitors and this what's called a slope resistor. 33K slope resistor, that's normal, standard Marshall. These are 0.022 microfarad coupling caps, which is basically set for the middle and bass pots, here and here, or middle and bass, standard. Now, in a normal super lead, this will be a 470 picofarad. So again, they've gone one value up, which means that we kind of get some more upper mids coming through the tone stack here. So that's definitely a mod. So we are up to 1, 2, 3, 4 mods. Everything else here, as I move through the amp, completely standard and stock. All right, absolutely standard and stock. Now, the next thing that is worth commenting on is this guy here. This is the negative feedback line, this purple wire, which you can see is connected to the speaker jack, which again, you've heard me talk about this before on the channel. I don't like that. Very kind of old school, traditional, I guess, but what it means is if you change the speaker cabinet that you're running with the amp from, say, a 16 ohm cab to an 8 ohm cab, it's going to change the amount of negative feedback. All right, so the amount of negative feedback signal you get coming through the amp will be determined by what your impedance selector is set to. So what builders will often do, and certainly it's the modern way, is you connect the negative feedback line directly to the impedance selector onto the tap that you choose, 4, 8 or 16, depending on what voicing you're going for. And then no matter what cab someone's plugging into the amp, you've always got the same amount of negative feedback coming through. So 100k, I guess, you'll often see 47k here. You often see 47k in a Plexi. So, is that a mod? Well, you'll see 100 as well, to be frank. So I'm not sure that's a mod. Let's just call that a voicing selection. Everything else in the amp looks completely stock and looks exactly the same as the standard 1959 hand-wired. It's beautifully built. These things are clearly done by hand by Marshall in England. The only other noticeable thing in here, and I noticed this for the last 1959 Super Lead hand-wired that I had in here, the grid stoppers on the power tubes, unusual. All right, these are 1K5. That's not unusual. That's kind of normal. But good practice is you have the grid stopper right on the pin. You don't kind of want this extra lead here. You want the grid stopper right on the pin as close as possible. And you would typically see a grid stopper on every pin. So you should have 4. Unusually, well, this is unusual, that the inputs to the grid here, and here's one of them, the green, and the other one is the blue here. They're going straight from this point in the amp. Here's one, here's the other. Straight onto the grids here without a grid stopper. And only the outside tubes have an actual grid stopper, which, as I said, better practice would be to have them actually on the pin. So I have no idea why Marshall do that. It's the only thing in this amp that looks kind of strange. So let's have a listen to this thing.